everybody. Just quickly, we've come early this morning simply because while we are looking at the back end of some impala, if you look carefully to the sort of right-hand side of your screen, you can see a pride of lions that are causing consternation amongst this herd of impala, and we just thought that the shot of both of them in the same picture is just too wonderful to miss. Welcome to the Dawn Safari here in the northeastern corner of South Africa, the beautiful Kruger National Park. We're on the western fringes of it on a little gem called Djuma and Arathusa off to the west of us. About 1,500 hectares, 4,000 acres of wilderness wonderland that we are very privileged to call home. My name is James Henry. On camera today is Brian. Hello, Brian. As you see, the mere mention of Brian's name caused a scattering of the impala. And in the final control today, we have Rebecca on her second solo drive. Kirsten is there too. Not sure where Geraldine's this morning. And then on the other vehicle, Jamie being filmed by Jean-Andre the Foot Gerding. So, welcome to it. You are on a live safari, as I said to you. That means that you must and please do talk to us, ask us questions, give us your comments about what we're seeing. Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, questions@wildearth.tv, or chat to us on the YouTube chat stream. And that noise you can hear if you're perhaps a first-time viewer is the alarm calling of the impala. Let's just listen for a little while. Jamie's just calling me on the radio. I'm going to talk to her. Go ahead. Affirmative. So she's just asking. She's obviously not too far from here, Jamie, and she can hear the shouting impala, and she's just checking that they're shouting at these lions. Now, what they're going to do here, this is quite interesting, is they are within the flight distance. And the whole point of this, of course, is that they will be watching where the lions are and making sure that they see where all individuals in the pride are. So they'll be kind of looking around, approaching, checking, but they won't close within that flight distance. The flight distance, of course, is the distance at which they will run away from a potential predator. So they are not, sorry, I've said that they were within that distance. They're just outside it, and they'll stay outside it. Let's move a little bit forward. And while we do that, Deborah, armchair traveller, you say, woohoo, the Nkuhumas lions, and you hope that they killed last night. I don't know if they killed last night, Deborah, but I do know that they left their... what shall we say, their markings on quarantine clearings. Jamie drove here from Inga's house, which is sort of, we live over there at the DRC. Jamie lives over there at Inga's, and she said her drive over here was filled with a stink second to none. So the lions certainly were around quarantine. There were lots of wildebeest around there yesterday. So let's see if we can have a look at their bellies, and we'll decide if they had a meal last night or not. So far, I don't think that they did. And I know they were hungry. Maybe something small, maybe a small snack. We'll look for blood on their muzzles. We'll look for swollen bellies. What do you think, Brian? I don't think they ate anything.
No, I don't think
no. Yes, they look a little bit morose, to be honest. I think they're probably quite hungry still. Maybe they ate an impala. They certainly didn't devour anything very large, and I really hope that if they did kill, it wasn't one of those baby wildebeest. She looks like she's got a bit of a belly on her, but don't forget, everybody, that 2 or 3 of these lionesses have been mating with the Birmingham boys, and that means swollen bellies could mean little cubs. And that would be very exciting indeed. This pride took a hammering at the claws and teeth of the bad-tempered Birmingham gang when they arrived here a little while back. And let's hope that those numbers are being replaced soon by little cubs. Now, lions, of course, in the great tradition of lions, are lying flat on the ground in a carpet of tawny and golden fur, which, while it is a very attractive colour juxtaposed against the green, is, well, it's not as exciting as it might be if they were on the hunt for those impala or perhaps a zebra that walked past here. But this is what is going to happen, I think. They will have given up the hunt by now. As you can see, they are large. Well, you probably can't see that, but they are large. They're enormous. And if you're watching in the States, they're almost twice the size of a mountain lion or a cougar. So about 120 kilograms here, 260 pounds. And that makes hunting during the daytime, even in quite thick cover, very difficult. Their prey is largely diurnal and also very wily, so they've got excellent eyes and ears and noses, and these lions will find it very difficult to hunt once the light has broken. And as you can see, the morning is turning into very, very beautifully lit. There we have the sky. It was so gorgeously pink as we came out here, and it's now turning that subtle sort of yellow color, and we'll see how it changes with those clouds as the morning continues. And somebody asked the other day what my favorite time of the day was. Well, I'm just not sure that you can beat that little gem of time, that jewel of space, just before the sun pops up over the horizon. The doves calling, some starlings, some sparrows. Beautiful. Now, we were talking about the wildebeest, and Jamie has got some, but before we do that, we're just going to have a very sad goodbye to my old hat. There it is. It's all over. I have a new one. Slightly large for my small head, but anyway, there it is. Welcome, Mr. Hat. Let's go across to Jamie. She's got some wildebeest for you. I'll see you just now.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. I'm sure you'll all agree with me that the replacement of James's hat is something of a sad occasion. Not quite, however, as traumatic as the evening that these poor wildebeest probably experienced last night. Between the lions walking across quarantine, hunting, and the attentions or the constant attentions of the males, or the male, towards the females, I can't imagine that they've had a terribly good time of things. It was cloudy and windy last night. They must have been feeling absolutely terrified. I haven't managed to do a proper head count of all of our little wildebeest calves. I drove past a very pungent smell earlier, and I double and triple checked. I think most of the smell would be accounted for by a lion scat, which is always a little bit smelly, but I haven't discounted the possibility that those lions managed to catch a small animal, whether it be a wildebeest calf or an impala. Whoop. Either way, since we've settled down here and started watching on quarantine, these wildebeest calves have been having an absolute whale of a time, bounding about quarantine, playing with each other, chasing each other, flicking their heels up in the air, obviously rejoicing in the fact that they managed to survive to the morning. Who knew wildebeest could be so incredibly entertaining? And of course, off to the right there is one very dejected and rejected male. He still hasn't quite managed to succeed with the lovely ladies. He's put in a great deal of effort. It hasn't quite worked out for him. And thus he finds himself on the fringes, possibly re-evaluating his technique in terms of wildebeest, what would we call it? Wildebeest mating habits, let's just put it that way. Looking terribly sad. Morning, Jax.
Morning. How are you?
Oh, good, and you? Hi, guys.
Morning.
Cheers. I think perhaps it's my imagination, but he does look terribly dejected. I was just saying good morning to Tax. And on that note, good morning to you all. My name is Jamie, and I have Jeandre on camera with me this morning. And we've got, fly landed right between my eyes. We've got all kinds of exciting things planned for you. James, of course, already having found the lions. I'm going to head up towards the hyena den and see what's happening there. But I just want to stay with this wildebeest herd a little bit longer, and I hope I can show you some of the games that they've been having. I might need to reposition, however, since at the moment all we've got is some dots of backsides moving across quarantine. Lovely to see this wildebeest herd back once again. Hopefully we'll get to spend a bit more time with them. Oopsie. I have totally got out of the habit of pressing the immobilizer on Rusty. I've been driving the other vehicle, Wendy, for the last 2.5 weeks. It's amazing how your muscle memory establishes itself that quickly. Male. Just keeping an eye on the male. I'm hoping he's going to go and make another attempt at speed dating. Let's pull up here for the moment and watch the habits of our impalas, who have been exceptionally entertaining. Well, Christina, you've been away for a couple of days and you're wondering if the impala have started rutting. Not fully. One male managed to yesterday while we were watching them around the females. He managed to collect an entire harem that he was then vigorously defending. Unfortunately for him, he was wasting his energy a bit because it's a bit too early. But Christina, if you have a look at these impala, they are already absolutely covered in ticks. It's incredible. We always talk about and flies actually as well. We always talk about the loss of condition that the male impala experience in the time that they start the rut versus 2 months later when they finish. But we're nearly there. You can see how the hormones are playing a role. And it's actually quite funny to watch because they walk past each other, but constantly on edge, waiting for one of the males to have a go at them. Constantly squaring up to each other, constantly on alert. Yes, we're very close to watching them begin their rut. And Christina, we're also very close to seeing the wildebeest starting to rut as well. They will also be mating very soon. That's why I've been joking a little bit about the attentions of the male to this herd of females. Isn't it amazing how impala, when they spar like this, always pick out a suitably aged male to practice with? Oh! And there goes our male wildebeest cantering into the fray. Ladies, I have arrived. Stop. Stop right there. Casting his head backwards and forwards, looking for any lady luck. The spatula herd of impala are very much without ladies, which is very typical of this time of year for impala. They'll split off into females with youngsters and then bachelor herds. And this time of year they almost look as though they are tussling for the sake of it. But that, of course, is all important practice. Now, Sandblaster, you were just looking at commenting about the size difference of their horns. Of course, antelope have horns rather than antlers because they're a permanent feature on the top of their heads, made of bone rather than reinforced blood vessels as antlers are in deer. Oh, everybody is so jumpy this morning. You just can't trust anyone when you're wandering around in this bachelor herd. And yes, Sandblaster, you can actually age an impala by the growth of their horns. Since they are a permanent feature, they don't shed them once a year and then regrow. They will be there for the rest of their lives. And it's only when an impala is about 4 years old, like the one that we were looking at there. In fact, the three that have just walked off your screen, these male impala are fully grown. The one that's just walking in front there is probably about 2 years old, maybe 2.5. So you can age them by the extent that the horns have grown and the shape that the horns have reached. It's only when they're 4 years old that they sort of complete their growth and get that full curve and twist to the back. And we've got a mixed bag here of different ages. I feel a certain sense of deja vu. This is exactly how I started my morning, yesterday morning, sitting with impala and wildebeest, watching their antics as they start to move up or move closer to their breeding season. A lot of what we're seeing on these antelope are flies and not ticks, but there are a few antelope with serious tick infestations here. And over the next few months, when a male does manage to acquire a female, he will not eat, he will not groom, he will not sleep, he will just fight, making them somewhat easy food for the animals that James has found for you this morning. On that subject, let's head back over to James and have a quick look at those lions.
Hi everybody. As you can see, not much has happened except that the two lionesses who had deigned to raise their heads for us have now put them down, and they are sleeping on the verdant greenery that is this clearing to the east of the Djuma Dam. So I don't think we're going to spend a great deal of time here. I don't think they're going to move much. And, well, you know, there's just quite a lot of the wilderness to explore. And so we'll sit here for a few more minutes. And if you've got any questions, send them through. Remember, hashtag Safari Live, questions at wildearth.tv, or the YouTube chat stream. That works pretty well. And we can have a quick chat about the Nkuhumas pride. Now, this is the pride that, for those of you who are new viewers, and I know there are quite a few over the last few days, this is the pride of lions that we see the most often. They provide the bulk of our lion viewing, and that's just because Djuma, where we do most of our driving, is basically the central part of their territory. A very nice question here from Deborah Armchair Traveller. As I was talking about the territorial behavior of these lions and the fact that this is the central part of their territory, Deborah, you want to know if they came across other lionesses, would they avoid conflict, or would there be some kind of physical confrontation? Deborah, by and large, animals out here will avoid physical contact because they can tell who's going to win, normally simply from size. But lions, of course, because they live in a pride, and much like hyenas, because they live in a pack or in a clan, are willing to take physical risks where leopards and cheetahs are absolutely not willing to take those risks. So the chances of a meeting of unrelated lionesses within their territory resulting in a physical confrontation are high. But what you'll normally find is that the invaders, if they were to come across the territorial owners, would turn around and run off pretty quickly. It's highly unlikely that a sort of female, ooh, high action here, one of them's lifted her head. It's highly unlikely that there would be sort of territorial takeover like there are with the male lions. That's a real kind of physical confrontation and definitely happens with males. Normally, this pride would only kind of lose this territory if they all died. And it's interesting, even if this pride was reduced to only one lioness, it's unlikely that the territory would be filled with other lionesses. It's only when there's a vacuum created that other lionesses would move into this area. Very nice question. Thank you, Deborah. They've smelled something on the wind. I must say, I smell a bit of a sort of animal. It could be buffalo, it could be wildebeest, something like that. And so for their very sensitive noses, they must be full up. And it is just interesting to note how, oh, here we go, there's huge action. Now, you see, to me, her belly looks quite swollen underneath. And I wonder if she isn't pregnant. I mean, it's highly likely that she is. And won't it just be so exciting to see some little cubs? They don't look skinny, though, you know. They don't look, lions, when they're hungry, they look very skinny. So maybe they had a small snack last night. They certainly don't look to be desperately in need of food by any stretch. And just to quickly finish what I was saying, you know, Djuma is the central part of their territories, but their territory extends quite a long way to the west of us, a very long way to the east of us, and their total territory probably covers, it's actually quite a small lion territory, it probably covers about 3,500 to 4,000 hectares, which is about 10,000 acres. And that for a lion pride, I'd say, is quite a small territory. The Styx lioness is about the same size, I suppose. They're to the south of us. And of course, the territory size is largely determined not by the other lions in the area, but by the amount that there is to eat. So it's a testament to the amount of prey available in the Sabi Sands that they have such small territories compared with, say, a Kalahari lion, which would have an enormous territory. Christine, very nice question. For those of you who don't know, we are involved with an NGO called Panthera. They do some extremely valuable cat research around the world. And Christine, you say, is there something equivalent for the lions? Christine, Panthera does all cats. So we mark all of our lion pride activity with Panthera. We log it all on a GPS system or GIS system. We don't collect their scats yet. They're not doing the lion scats at the moment. So no, we haven't done that sort of thing. But certainly we do contribute to Panthera's lion research as well. So Panthera is not only the leopards, they do all cats around the world, I think all the big cats. They have tiger projects going. They have, I think they've got the odd jaguar project going. And certainly the lions and leopards of the Sabi Sands form an enormous part of the research that they do. And you can go and check out what they do at panthera.org on the interweb, obviously. Brian, would you say that filming flat cats is your favorite activity in the world?
Best thing in the world.
So Brian, of course, has to become quite imaginative now in order to keep the picture moving. Now look at her swollen nipples. Look how swollen she is. There's no suckling there. There's definitely no suckling, but she's got very swollen nipples. Right, from those swollen teats, let's go across to Jamie. She's apparently got a magnificent view of the rapidly rising sun.
I have garnered a new appreciation for wildebeest over the last few months, and this morning light is absolutely emphasizing my rediscovery of them as an antelope species that I really enjoy. They look so beautiful as they go about their morning routine. And this autumnal light is also absolutely extraordinary. We've watched them accompanied by the odd contact call between the wildebeest calves. Whilst they are fully weaned, they are still calling to their mothers every now and again. It's sort of a meh sound. Such highly entertaining animals. Look at them scratching on that apple leaf tree. Oh, just getting the right spot there. As they wander across the clearing, there's a very crisp, cool breeze that is blowing across towards us. And Matt was wondering could I explain why there is always a drop in temperature at sunrise? And it's definitely something that I've experienced, and I'm not entirely sure what causes it. I mean, I know that with sunrise, a lot of the cloud cover burns away almost immediately. And of course, clouds can have a very insulating effect on the earth. They stop the heat that's coming up from the earth from escaping into the atmosphere. So that might be one explanation, Matt. I'm not entirely sure why it is, and if there's not also a sort of a psychosomatic, from a human's perspective, feeling that when the sun comes out, it's got to be a little bit warmer. But geographically, I'm not 100% sure why it is that we feel that drop in temperature as the sun comes up, but I have experienced it, and I know exactly what you mean. For those of you who are more meteorologically, I'm not sure what the word is. Chandre's throwing his crutches about in amusement at my inability to pronounce words this morning. If anybody knows why we feel that drop in temperature first thing in the morning, please let me know. You can do that on #SafariLive on Twitter, or email through to questions@wildearth.tv, or even on our YouTube chat stream. I'd love to know what it is exactly that causes the feeling of the drop in temperature first thing in the morning. Isn't this light just extraordinary? And with all of this green grass in quarantine, it is sights like this, it's such a pleasurable way to start the morning. Mouthfuls of grass. These animals bulking up as we enter into our dry season. They are making the absolute most of whatever food they manage to find. Look how big the calves have got. Just imagine the amount of, or the speed of that growth. You watch them being born at the beginning of the year, the start of the year, and they've almost reached the same heights as the adults. Now, the amount of resource sort of processing that has to occur, and also the incredible amount that the females put in providing that rich milk that allows them to grow at that speed, especially during a time of drought. And Gen B, perhaps I should have clarified a little bit better. I said that the calves are weaned. Some of them are not fully weaned. They're still suckling every now and again. I have seen them suckling. It looks totally bizarre because they have to sort of almost lean down onto their chests and lift their heads up in order to reach up to their moms. So that's why Gen B has observed that there are still some full udders amongst these wildebeest cows. Absolutely, and there are some wildebeest calves that are a little bit younger than others, and they are still suckling from their mothers every now and again. But that's going to stop very, very soon. I've also seen the odd impala lamb still suckling. So one or two of them still not fully independent from their mothers just yet. And watching them suckle as well is always an interesting experience, because they, like all mammals, or at least like most mammals out here, they stimulate the secretion of milk from their mothers, which in the case of wildebeest, they will headbutt their mothers. Sorry, I'm just listening to the Game Drive channel. They headbutt their mothers in order to stimulate that milk production. Mike's just calling in. I think he's found either a leopard or he's found tracks. And I just want to listen for one moment. Look at this extraordinary morning light. Mike, that's Weaver's Nest. Confirm you've got visual of that animal. Copy that. I would like to make my way there. Copy that, thank you. Okay. Morning is extraordinary, but it's time to go because Mike has found a leopard. An answer from Joel about our cooling effect of the sunrise. And Joel, thank you very much. He's sending his answer in all the way from New York. And Joel is telling me that it's when the energy that is radiated from the Earth then moves up into the atmosphere and escapes into the atmosphere, causing that cooling effect. So sort of similar what we discussed in terms of the effect of the cloud cover burning away. Although it feels as though the clouds are gathering again since we've had our morning sunrise. But that's exactly, Joel's answer sort of provides exactly what we were thinking about in terms of the way in which things cool down. And I'm really feeling it now just driving along. And it's something that guests often make the mistake of assuming that Africa is hot and that their trips to Africa, they will be constantly warm, and they forget about the wind chill factor of sitting on the back of an open vehicle. And I'm feeling it very, very clearly this morning, just driving along. The wind chill probably drops the temperature by about, easily, depending on how fast you're going, I would say 3, 4, 5 degrees centigrade, which is about 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm on my way to a different big cat sighting, and who knows which leopard it is. I certainly don't. I'd love to know if any of you can guess. I guess it's Karula. That would be my guess, but we'll have to wait and see. And while I race across to my sighting, why don't you jump on the back and have a look at the biggest predator out here.
My goodness, everybody, you can't believe what we've been watching since you've been gone. Sure. The lioness in the middle there lifted her head and put it down again. It's been absolutely astounding stuff while you've been away. The lioness in the middle there is Amber Eyes We noticed that because she opened her eyes briefly before closing them again and going into sweeter repose. As a result, I'm pretty sure now of a small meal last night. I think they would be much more active if they were particularly hungry now. And let's just to remind you, just before we left, you left us, we were looking at that lioness closest to us. She's got very swollen teeth indeed, and I think that probably means that there are some little cubs on the way. Quickly, Brian, to the left. One of them sat up. There we go. Oh, we nearly missed it. Oh, goodness gracious, another one's head's up. There's Amber Eyes. A question here from a name I'm struggling to hear, so I'm going to ask Rebecca to say it again more slowly, if you don't mind, Rebecca. M-Kiz. M-Kiz. Hello, M-Kiz. I'm not sure how you'd spell that, M-Kiz. You want to know about this lioness who is pregnant. When will she give birth? And would she perhaps wait until the summer months to give birth? M-Kiz, no, definitely won't wait. Lionesses are not A, seasonal breeders, and B, once she's pregnant, once the physiological process is in play, she cannot hold back or delay or bring forward the birthing of her youngsters. There are various legends around the world where you will hear of animals that are able to do this. The impala is the most famous in this particular area. It is not physically possible. Once a fetus is developing in the uterus, it is impossible for the lioness to then stop that development and, sort of hold off birth until favorable conditions. So I think that given that the gestation period is just over 3 months, and she's probably been pregnant for about 6 weeks, I would say, from the looks of that, I'd say we're looking at between I'd say 6 weeks. She may be a little bit further along than that. So perhaps we're looking at between a month and a half before she gives birth. Now, remember, lions don't need to be seasonal breeders. And one of the main reasons for that is that the winter time is not necessarily a time of difficult hunting. Remember that the animals or the herbivores, their prey, are often quite weakened by the lack of grazing and browsing during the winter months. It's also a fact that they are they're coloured for the dry season. So if you see these lionesses walking through the green grass, they're very obvious. If you see them walking through the long, dry winter grass, they're not obvious at all. So I'm not sure that their hunting success is that much greater during the summer months than it is during the winter months. In fact, I'd say, it's probably about the same. Then if you go also into the summer months, the one advantage of the summer months, of course, is that there are little antelope around. There are small babies around, which of course are easier to catch than the big adults. But if you're a big lion like this, and a big pride of lions, and you're trying to A, feed a pride, and then B, feed your cubs, bigger prey like buffalo and large wildebeest and zebra are far more kind of what you're going for. And so although the winter months, at least the summer months, definitely favor things like leopards and perhaps, what else would it favor? It doesn't favor wild dogs or cheetah because they need to hunt in the clearings and the winter's better for that. So, yeah, that's why they're not seasonal. Now, Jeffrey, you're in Texas and you want to know about whether or not, this is quite interesting and I don't know the answer, you want to know if a lioness smelling another lioness's urine is able to tell that she's pregnant or not. I'm going to guess yes, Jeffrey, and I'll tell you why. In the urine, of course, will be traces of the hormones that are produced by the lioness. It's the same in any mammal, and a male, of course, can tell if a female is pregnant by smelling her urine and doing phlegmon or engaging in the phlegmon behavior, which is to lift the soft palate and open a tract into the organ of Jacobson, or the vemeronasal organ, which is an organ just below the brain and helps to interpret smell and things like pheromones. So, more action there. So, Jeffrey, one of the hormones that is produced, if I'm not mistaken, in great profusion when a mammal is pregnant is progesterone. And I suspect quite strongly that a lioness would be able to pick up on that if she smelt another lioness's urine. Would that change her behavior? I don't know. I don't think so. You know, lionesses are not particularly egalitarian in their ways, so I'm not sure that it would necessarily change her behavior at all. But would she be able to tell that if she was pregnant? Would she be able to interpret that progesterone as her colleague being pregnant? I don't know. It's an interesting one. The Twitter handles are just too wonderful. Goober Waller. Goober Waller? I'd love to know where that comes from. I don't know what Goober Waller means. But Goober Waller, you want to know if the lion's estrus cycles are perhaps attached to the moon cycle. Goober Waller, no, they're almost certainly not, and that's because they're irregular. They are not regular like they are with humans. So whereas a human's estrus or ovulation cycle is almost exactly a calendar month of 28 days, not a calendar month, a lunar month of 28 days. With lions and with leopards, and in fact with just about all the carnivores out here, their estrus cycles are based on whether or not they have young at the time. So a lioness who loses her cubs will come into estrus almost immediately. If she then falls pregnant and has cubs, she will raise them, and then when they're about 2.5 years old, she'll come into estrus again. And that's basically the factors that will define when she comes into estrus and when she ovulates. New males in the area can also induce a sort of estrus cycle, or an anestrus, which is a false estrus, but certainly I don't think that the moon has anything to do with it. Just scratching her tummy there. It's a little bit itchy. You can see that the nipples on that lioness are not quite as swollen as the other one, but that said, they are quite pretty obvious. And if you look at Amber Eyes' nipples, which you can see now, they are not swollen at all. You can just see them peeping out from beneath that soft white fur of the belly. So maybe we have two pregnant lionesses here. She doesn't seem to have any either, Brian, does she? No. So maybe two pregnancies, which would be marvellous. That could mean at least 6 cubs. And one thing that lions will do, of course, is cross-suckle their cubs, and that is unusual. There are very few animals that will do that. Lions are one of them. Hyenas will not. Elephants will do it if they have to. If the mother dies, then a calf can be adopted by another lactating female. But otherwise it is very unusual. You can just feel, I don't know if you can feel it, or you can probably hear it, and that then transfers a feeling to you perhaps. But as the sun has kind of broken through the trees to the east of us, so the doves have started to call, and it's just got a lot louder suddenly. And from Goober Waller we go to Brazil's yak. Brazil's yak. You want to know if they will use old den sites? I think that they probably will. And Brazil's yak, that's because den sites for lionesses are in fairly short supply. I'm just looking at what they're looking at. I can't see anything, but they're looking straight across the Djuma Dam into those clearings, so perhaps they've smelt or sensed a buffalo or a wildebeest or an impala coming down to drink unawares. They're still quite a long way away, though. Brazil's yak, a lioness will give birth in a bit like a leopard, in an overhang, or find a little cave somewhere in a sort of dry stream, even in some very thick bush next to a river. normally next to a riverbed. And because the space required for something like that is in fairly short supply in an area like this, I think you'll find that they will often use the same den sites. So unlike a hyena, which can excavate a termite mound that has been opened up by an aardvark, same goes for a wild dog. The leopards and lions are not known for their digging ability, and of course if you're the size of a lioness, then you need a fairly large cave. Rocky outcrops are also another favourite, so there are none on Djuma or on Arathusa, but if you go south of us, there's a line of granite outcrops that stretches all the way from Ulusaba in the far west of the Sabi Sands, and then all the way into Mala Mala, which is just to the south of us. And you'll find there lots of pretty nice rocky overhangs and outcrops where a lioness might be able to give birth, and the leopard also. Very tired, you can see. So, Tammy, a very nice question. You're in Seattle. What have they seen? What have they seen and how are they talking to each other is the question. They're all up now. Tammy, I will get back to your question. It's just another vehicle coming in. Tammy, sorry, I'm just quickly looking at something here. Right. No, nothing of great import. Tammy, I'm afraid I've forgotten your question. I'm going to ask Rebecca to read it through to me again. Ah, yes. What is the greatest number of cubs that a lioness can have, and what's the greatest number I've ever seen survive? Well, Tammy, I think much like with the leopard, it's not impossible that a lioness could have up to 6 cubs, and possibly even more in captivity, but to make 6 survive would be nigh on impossible. I've seen 4 raised almost to adulthood, and then they were kind of taken out by a coalition of males that came in. And so, 4 is round about the maximum number in a pride. It's not impossible that they could raise slightly more than that, but I think 2 and 3 each is going to be the best number for the greatest chances of survival. So if the 2 of them produce 2 and 3 cubs each, it's likely that 2 and 3 can survive to adulthood, but greater than that, the chances reduce remarkably, especially if there is only 1 lactating female. So if one of them produces 4 and the other produces 3, the fact that there are 2 lactating females will spread the load of the feeding, and that will make a difference. It's an interesting observation here from Lucy in Indiana, who says that the lionesses who seem to be pregnant seem to be breathing a lot faster than the others. Lucy, I'm watching 2 now. Yeah, I have to agree with you. You say, is there a possibility that they're breathing faster because they're pregnant? I imagine it probably is, Lucy. I don't know. I'm sure their oxygen requirements are higher. Their physiologies are obviously moving, or their metabolic rate is going to definitely be higher because they are not supporting just themselves. So yes, it's quite possible that the breathing could be increased because they're pregnant. And certainly, as soon as that one lioness stood up, she looked pretty skinny, and I think that, if they did eat last night, it was something very small. It's so nice to see them interact with each other like this, and so really does juxtapose their behavior with their behavior at a kill, where they slash at each other and bite each other and hit each other on the face. Isn't that sweet? Oh. Now, some of you are watching this from two angles, one of which is the dam cam, which is about 200 meters across the other side of the dam, so you can see onto us and perhaps onto the lions. And you notice that Brian and I are not alone on the vehicle today. Oh no. With us we have Sam Chevalier, who's just landed from Paris. No, he hasn't really. He's just landed from Cape Town, and he is, as many of you will know, our new presenter. And he's just taking a couple of notes. I don't know what on earth he's taking notes about, especially if I'm speaking, but he is writing a few things down, and he will introduce himself to you this afternoon. He'll take his first drive. We're going to ease him into things, I think, over the next week or so, and just let him settle in. I know when Brent and Jamie and I started, and Scott to a certain extent, there was kind of a desperate need for presenters, and so we arrived, put our bags down, and were immediately driving. Now, we're not in the same position with Sam, so rather than shock him into the system like happened with the rest of us, we'll let him gently ease his way in. So I will ask you to kindly welcome him and ask him very pleasant questions this afternoon, and let's ease him in to what has certainly been the best job I've ever had. The lionesses, I think they are pretty hungry, you know. I was just saying I thought they had maybe had something small, and so they were satisfied. But every time a little scent on the wind touches their noses of perhaps something delicious to eat for breakfast, they lift their heads. But of course, any herbivore worth its salt is going to be able to see them a mile off. They're lying right in the open. It's great to see them play like this. There's white bellies. And you can see, I mean, the color that they are is ideally suited not for this time of the year, but for the winter. Julianne, you want to know if lions are soft to the touch? Well, you know, I'd love to go and find out for you, but I think it might result in my becoming their breakfast, so I don't think I will. I will tell you that I have touched both a dead and a darted lioness, and yeah, it's not wiry, but it's not quite as soft as you might think it is. It is pretty hard, and their belly hair is as soft as it looks. But their top fur and the fur on their heads is quite, I suppose it would be like not like a Labrador, it would be a bit like I don't know if you've ever touched a Ridgeback or some short-haired dog like that. It feels a bit like that, maybe even slightly harder even. But their belly hair is very soft. Remember that everything about a lion, though, is actually quite hard. Their tongues, that sandpaper-like tongue, is capable of licking the fur off a prey animal. Their claws are obviously immensely long and very sharp. The muscles that they have are incredibly powerful. And so where your house cat is a soft and fluffy and cuddly thing, a lion is just... even though they look pretty cuddly doing what they're doing now, they're hard. They move around all the time. They don't move around all the time, but they are designed for very kind of physically difficult lives. So they take an enormous hit every time they hunt. And then when they jump on a zebra, they will often take a kick, or the zebra will land on top of them, or the wildebeest will land on top of them. And they have to be built to take those enormous kind of physical traumas. And so they're hard. Again, another name I'm struggling to hear. Is it, Brian, did you get Guess Verion? Guess Verion. Hello, Guess Verion. We've had Uber Walla. And Guess Verion. Yeah, Guess Verion. Very, very valid question. To what extent are lions able to discern human beings from the vehicles in which they are sitting? Guess Verion, it's an interesting one that I'm not sure anybody truly understands, and that is because we know that lions can see human beings. When we're on foot, we know that they react to us in a very specific way. If we were to walk along here, these lionesses would stand up. I've walked into these lionesses before. They'd look, and then they'd back off. They'd go and find some cover to get away from us because they see us as a predator. Now, we also know that they see the vehicles as no kind of threat at all. So the immediate thought is to think, well, then they're not seeing the human being on the vehicle because they don't run away from us and they don't react to us. But a very good naturalist I know once said to me, how can we think that that's possibly true when a lioness is able to discern an impala's ear behind a tree? You know, they've got exceptional sight. So how they don't see us on the vehicles is difficult to understand. Now, maybe what it is that they just don't see us as a threat, because they don't associate the vehicles and us as a threat. We're also not standing up, we're not bipedal while we're sitting in the vehicles, and that would also definitely have something to do with it. So if we were to all stand up on the back of the vehicle, and there's a Cheetah Plains vehicle here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people on it, if they were to all stand up straight away, then I think you might find that the lions would react, but certainly still not in the same way that they would to us approaching them on foot. So it's a complicated one, and I'm not sure that we fully understand what it is. The other thing about the vehicles, of course, is that they don't smell like human. To a lioness, they must smell like brake fluid and steering fluid and petrol and, of course, rubber and various other greases and things that a vehicle smells of, so they're not picking up human scent. But that said, if the wind does blow from behind us, they will often just lift their heads, especially animals like buffalo will react when they smell human being. So I hope that's a satisfactory answer. It's definitely not a very definite one, but it does give you an idea of what's going on with these lions. So I think we're probably going to leave the lions now, let them snooze it up for the morning, and we'll head across to Jamie while we'll do that, and we'll decide on our next plan of action.
Well, unfortunately, it seems as though Karula has managed to escape us all. She's ducked into the drainage line system around Twin Dams, and this vegetation is unbelievably dense in this particular area. It's one of her favorite spots. At the moment I'm trying to watch and I'm trying to show you guys the blue waxbill that is nest building, and I can still see it. I'll try go forward and don't. These little blue waxbills are such difficult birds. Can you see me bobbing about on the top of that fallen tree there, Jean-Dave? Perfect, thank you. Look at him. What on earth is that doing? Bobbing up and down like that. I can't quite work this one out. Some kind of display to a female to say, look what nest building material I found. Or is he trying to shake the seeds off the grass? Surely he could just pluck them off. I have absolutely no idea what this bird is doing. Look at him. He's bouncing up and down on this branch. I've got no idea. Must be some kind of display. He's been carrying that stem or that inflorescence of that grass for a while now. I've been watching him. I've been sitting here just listening for alarm calls in the hope that Karula might decide to wander through in this direction. I've been completely distracted now. Doing a little jig. Is he stuck? Can't be stuck, surely. I have seen, that being said, blue waxbills are very, very tiny, light little birds, and I have seen one stuck in a spider web before. It didn't last very long. It did manage to get out relatively quickly. It was stuck in a golden orb spider web, which has phenomenal tensile strength. But I don't quite understand what this little bird is doing. Just clutching this piece of grass. I want to just watch. I want to see if it goes and starts building a nest. They like to build nests in thorny trees. Something like a buffalo thorn or a knob thorn. It looks like he's currently sitting in a dead, or on the branch of a dead knob thorn. Earth. Shaking his head about. And he would much prefer to nest in a live knob thorn. Something with foliage to protect it. There's another one at the bottom. It's fascinating to witness. Such beautiful little blue birds. I wonder if that's not the female at the bottom. It can be very difficult to tell the difference between male and female blue waxbills. The males are slightly more vivid in their colouring, which makes me think that possibly the one at the bottom is a female. And I think, Jane B, I think you're right. I think he's trying to entice the lady, or that it is playing some kind of courtship role. Not that she seems terribly interested in whatever he's doing, but just that whole motion doesn't seem to make sense in any other context except perhaps he's showing off. That's all I can think that he's doing. He's saying, look what I got, look how clever I am, look what a good provider I am. It's the only explanation that I can offer for this behavior. An elephant calling in the background. Where's that lady gone? Oh, there she is, on the right. Really certain she's a female. Yes, Jen B, I think that might be the case. You can see the buff stomach. She's not blue all the way through. Oh, she goes. Sorry. Oh, yep. He's going to follow her. Okay, that makes more sense now. That must have been what he was doing for some reason. Grey hornbill just flew past us. And Karula hasn't popped out here, despite my best hopes and wishes. So let's drive around and back to where she was last seen. See if we can't figure out exactly where she has gone. There's always the possibility that she's on her way back towards the cubs. She was moving south, which is in the right general direction, and she does like to use, she walks a direct line along this road and then past Treehouse Dam and back towards her den site. So that is a possibility, but I think that she would have popped out by now if that's what she was doing. She's probably hunting in these thick vegetation areas. That little time spent with the blue waxbills just goes to show that they are still in the process of courting, even though it's very, very late in our summer. Now, they're a little bird that we will see all year round, but Joey, you were wondering whether the non-migrant birds or the migratory birds have started their migration back up to the north. And the answer is yes, they have. Most of the species have started moving off. The cuckoos are gone for the most part. The woodlands kingfisher, I'm sure you've noticed, those of you who've been watching the Djuma Dam camera regularly, and over the last few months you would have heard the chirp, chirp call of the woodlands kingfisher almost constantly whilst watching. You must have noticed that that has completely disappeared. Our warbirds, it seems, they are one of the last ones to leave. They're still around. And some European bee-eaters are still around as well, but they're also looking as though they're on their way. I haven't seen a European roller in a couple of days. What else is headed off on its mission? I haven't seen any steppe buzzards or steppe eagles for a while as well, although we don't see them all that commonly on our live safaris. But they've probably started flying north. The white storks also on their way. So yes, a lot of the birds have started their migration, and it actually happened, I don't know if the migration occurred earlier, but a lot of those bird species disappeared sooner than expected this year from at least Djuma and the Sabi Sands, and that I think is entirely in response to the drought. Hardly saw or heard any cuckoos during our summer, and I think that that is probably a product of the fact that there just weren't, the insect load just wasn't high enough. Franklin's shouting away, but that's not an alarm call, that's a contact call between different groups of crested franklin. So they're not calling in response to Karula. The last time she was seen was just split seconds before I arrived, walking down towards this drainage line, towards this dip. A drainage line, for those of you unfamiliar with our terminology, is a sort of a river system, essentially. It's dry for most of the year, and it, as its name suggests, acts as a drainage area for water in the on the surrounding crests. So that's what a drainage line is. It's like a non-flowing river. They do occasionally flow when there's a lot of rain, but for the most part it's dry. All right, Karula. Fair enough, well played. Disappearing into the densest block that we have. To continue on our subject of the bird discussion, Tammy, you were wondering with the birds, and I presume specifically with the blue waxbill, whether the males are more brightly coloured and prettier than the females. Knowing Karula, she could also have disappeared that way and pop up that way. It's just the kind of thing that she does. She has a way of doing that. Sorry, Tammy, I will get to you in a moment. For the most part, yes. With almost all bird species, the males tend to be slightly more vivid in colour, with very limited exceptions. Usually the females, particularly of those tiny seed-eating passerines, the females are a lot more drab, if I could describe it that way, and it's sort of similar to our argument about why the kudu males have horns but the females don't. So the bright colours of the males are a reproductive advantage. It's their ways of saying, look at how fit and healthy I am, fit and healthy and beautiful. Whereas with the females, they don't need to sort of compete for access to mates. They'll be able to pick and choose their mates. And therefore, that bright coloration would be more of a disadvantage than anything else, and it pays off to be a bit more drab coloured, a bit more subtle, as a way of staying hidden away from predators. So the reason I compared that to the kudu is that the male kudus need horns to compete with each other for access to the females, but the females don't. And in fact, the horns are almost a hindrance to them in the thick vegetation that they live in. so they simply don't have them. They'd rather hide away. The same goes for a lot of the bird species. A couple of exceptions, within the African jacana, and I'm going to just duck under these trees here, and then I'm going to go and sit and turn off my engine and just listen for alarm calls. And I'll show you the pictures of some of the birds where the females display slightly more coloration than the females. And of course there's exceptions to that as well. For example, lilac-breasted rollers. The females and the males equally beautifully coloured. Okay, let's just take a quick stop here. Let's take the opportunity to double check. There's a nice bird for us to look at since we're busy chatting about them. He's sitting on top of that dead tree there. A red-backed shrike, actually. So there we go, Joey. Not all of our migratory birds have left. Red-backed shrikes are a migratory species. Let me just look up jacana for you. This is a lovely spot to stop for birds as well. Lots of them moving about. There you go. It doesn't as clearly demonstrate as I would like, but in the females of the African jacana, that blue actually shines through. To me, you can very clearly see which is a female and which is a male. The blue just is that much brighter. And that's because the female jacana has a very, very interesting mating technique where she will approach a male, she'll mate with him, and then she'll lay her eggs and then she leaves. And he raises her chicks for her, or their chicks for them, and she moves on to the next male. So a very, very interesting technique in terms of reproductive strategy with birds. And there's one more thing I just wanted to look up in answer to this question. I've just forgotten how the alphabet works. My new bird book finally acquiring a proper bird book look, starting to look that little bit tatty. So the blue waxbill, I mentioned that it's quite difficult to tell the difference at first glance, but you can see we saw on that female that the blue didn't extend all the way down to the body. So particularly with the blue waxbill, you can really see the difference, the startling difference. The male's much more vivid. Very, very bright in colour. And the same goes for a lot of the waxbill members. For example, the violet-eared waxbill. And I'd be really excited if we saw a violet-eared waxbill here. We could. I just haven't managed to see one yet, and I certainly haven't managed to get one on camera. But the same applies. Males very, very brightly coloured, far more so than the females. Rula. All right. Let's continue. Now, Sir William of Pennylot. It is quite a grand name you have there, Sir William. Sir William is watching in Australia and would like to know if we have any parrots. And the answer is yes, we do. We have a couple of different parrot species, but the only one that you will probably see in this area is the brown-headed parrot. We don't have any of the larger species of parrot, like, for example, the African grey. Those are found further to the north in sort of Central Africa. But we do have brown-headed parrots. We have a parrot known as a Mayer's parrot, and there's also the grey-headed parrot. So bright, vividly green, probably about the size of a parakeet would be my rough comparison scale for you. They're quite small for the parrot family, roughly that big. And very much in resident around trees with lots of fruit in them. They like the densely vegetated areas. We could even see one as we drive down this road. I've often heard them along this particular stretch. They are around here somewhere. I'm going to make my way towards Treehouse Dam, see if I can't catch up with Karula on the move. In the meantime, let's head back across to James and his cats that are very much not on the move.
Well, we haven't moved much, everybody. In fact, we haven't moved at all. Brian has moved the camera with great excitement. He pointed it at the sun, maxed out the ND filters, and is now back on the lions, who keep looking up every so often to see if they can't perhaps encourage an impala to come close by so that they might eat it. Now, what we're going to look at now quickly is Amber Eyes, and that's her there, where Brian is zooming now. And it looks as though she's kind of made a mistake with her lipstick this morning, but there's a sort of orange mark that stretches up over her nose and a cut above her right eye, so the left eye as you look at it. And that's just an indication that she's been in some kind of conflict. I suspect with other lions. I suspect maybe over a very small piece of prey that they ate last night. Those look like fairly fresh wounds to me. Of course, many of you saw these lions yesterday and perhaps can tell me whether those injuries are new or whether they came as a result of a scrap over some scraps last night. You like the way I did that, Brian?
That was
amazing. A scrap over some scraps, yeah. I thought it was pretty impressive myself, yeah.
You should write a book.
I should. And every so often behind us, still the impala alarm call. One or two of them just look up and remember that the lions are here and go, pfft, pfft. But the rest have not worried. That's because these lionesses are lying out in the open. I must confess, I think it's a very strange place for them to be. They could be lying in a thicket, and that way if something did pop past, they'd be able to eat it. I guess they're also kind of using us as cover a little bit. You know, they're looking basically around us and underneath the vehicle over across to the clearing where the Djuma Dam cam is. Hello, Simon. A very nice question about whether or not you do get maned female lions, and you make reference to Mamoriri, the maned lioness of the Okavango, I think she is. I have heard of her, Simon. I don't believe I've seen a picture of her. It does happen from time to time that a lioness will get a scraggly mane, in the same way that sometimes you might find a bearded lady. Not something that wants to be encouraged, I don't feel, but yes, I have met bearded women, and in the same way, one does every so often find a bearded lioness. They don't get manes that are big, very full, so for those of you who haven't seen pictures of a maned lioness, they won't get a great big black mane like a big male will, but sometimes they have a high testosterone level, and that high testosterone level can result in what we call secondary sexual characteristics. So that will be the development of extra muscle, it will be the development of hair, where a male lion would normally have hair. I think you'll find also a maned lioness would probably be a little bit larger than the standard issue maneless, very feminine looking lioness like these ones are. So it's just lovely to be with them for a while. I know I'm being fairly sarcastic about their inability to do anything useful during the day, but you know, we haven't spent a lot of time around them of late, because their territory does extend outside of where we operate. And so it's just great to sit with them in this glorious morning, beautiful light, lovely bird song, and Africa's premier, one of the most iconic animals the world over. And I was just doing a bit of reading about them. You know that this animal used to be, 10,000 years ago, the most widely spread land mammal in the world after human beings. Just let me say that again. The most widely spread land mammal in the world after human beings. They stretched throughout Eurasia, across the Bering Strait. They were found in the Americas. They are obviously long since extinct in the Americas. They went extinct latterly in Eurasia. Obviously, they were in we know that the Romans used them in their gladiatorial contests, and we know that they are represented in cultures throughout the world, especially in heraldry. I mean, they appear on flags, they appear in cave paintings, those French caves of Lascaux and I think it's Chauvet. There are paintings of lions there, and now they are isolated. Just two little patches of protected areas in Africa and the Gir forest in India. Those are the only place that you'll find wild lions. And while some of the other big cats, like leopards, will survive outside of protected areas because they're inconspicuous and able to stay out of the way, the same cannot be said for the big lions. Now, something interesting going on here. There's some impala there where the lioness that's standing up is looking. There's some impala coming through the thickets that the lions are not hiding from, but I don't believe the impala have seen them, simply because they are not alarm calling. Now, that lioness just snuck behind that little silver cluster leaf bush there, but they're not being very serious about hunting. She's going off to find some cover, which if she wanted to eat, she would have done some time ago. Let me just get into position in case a great chase ensues. It's so funny how cats and dogs, much like humans, will stretch when they stand up. And I don't believe it's simply for comfort. I'm pretty sure in the same way that it's a good idea for us to have a bit of a stretch before we exert ourselves physically, they do it in order to loosen the joints and make sure that there isn't an injury should they suddenly have to take off at high speed. Just looking into the bush there, there's nothing serious about what's going on here though. Christopher, obviously the comparisons between domestic cats and the wild cats here are impossible not to make, because despite the fact that a lioness is 20 times the size of a domestic cat, their behaviors are so similar. And you want to know if a lioness will need. So for those of you who don't know what that means, if you've got a domestic cat, when they sit on you and they kind of stick their claws in and they just sort of soften where they're going to lie down, do lionesses do that? Christopher, I've actually not seen them do that. Brian, have you seen them do it? I'm not sure that they do, and I haven't seen leopards doing it either. They certainly will, are not fussy about where they lie down. They don't sort of turn around like a dog does and check where they're going to lie. They just, when they decide they're going to lie down, they stop moving and fall over. So I don't think they do that kneading. They certainly sharpen their claws in the same way that a domestic cat will use a piece of furniture to sharpen its claws. So a lioness will often use a tree or a stump to sharpen her claws. So it's quite interesting. I'm just going to re-angle the vehicle slightly, see if it still starts. There we go, well done, Wendy. Let's just get into a position where we can see them all. High action going on here, as you can see. Now, watch as they go down to sleep. one time that they don't, they'll probably start moving in extended marathon session here. But you'll see, Christopher, no kneading, some stretching, bit of claw sharpening, and then straight down. So she used the termite mound there. She gripped into the termite mound, had a bit of a stretch. Just a flop over and down. And although lions, of course, are the most, well, in theory, terrifying predators that we have out here, being around them when they're like this is a tremendously peaceful experience, because they are completely at peace. They're relatively satisfied. I'm sure they're quite hungry, but they're not desperately so. And they're just enjoying each other's company. And of course, the other thing a lion likes to do is lie on its head. On its friend's head, I mean. Tammy, another one from you in Seattle. While we move, let's move a little bit. You say you want to know, you saw the lionesses cleaning the ticks and the flies off each other, and do they get some kind of nutritional value from doing this? Tammy, I would say almost certainly not. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of nutrition in a tick, but I think you'll find that they probably do spit them out sometimes, but they'd be so little, they'd be so small that it would have almost no effect on their physiology. It's purely for social grooming, which provides a bond, or reaffirms the social bonds and the pride. It's quite nice here, of course, is that we've got all the lions, and then we've got a buffalo, or the remains of a buffalo that they killed some time back. Same pride killed this buffalo. It's dead. See that, Brian?
A little bit.
Yeah. It's not alive anymore.
Did you drive over the landmine?
You think I did?
Maybe.
Oh dear. Brian can smell the truly offensive stink of lion dung, and he thinks I may have driven over some. I can't smell it yet, thank goodness. Have you found some? Sorry, I missed that one, Rebecca, again. Safari Diva, something about lion's digestion. I was considering the appalling stink of lion poo, and I was unable to think. Safari Diva, your question, as far as I understand it, I did hear it right the first time, is do lions encourage their cubs' digestion? I don't think I'm understanding it. I think if you... Brian is looking as deeply as confused as I feel. Maybe if you could ask it in a different way, I might be able to answer it, Safari Diva. I'm not sure what you're asking, I'm afraid. There's quite interesting, as was pointed out to us, of course, there does seem to be some increased breathing rate in the females that are perhaps pregnant. I don't think that one is. There, she's breathing quite heavily. It might be that she just ate more of the food that they caught last night, if they did catch anything. But I think that the thought that she's breathing heavily because she's pregnant is probably quite a good one. Here comes the last remaining lioness, and I think once she comes over this way and lies down, we'll probably push on and see what else we can find. Oh, Michael, you're 13 years old, and it's a very astute question you've asked, and it's a good one for this pride. You want to know if lions can have different coloured eyes, or if they all have the same colour eyes. Well, until very recently, I would have said, yes, they all do have the same colour eyes, and that's the eye colour that you can see there, which is a sort of pale yellowy green. But there is a lioness in this pride who has got amber-coloured or orange eyes, and she's the slightly injured one. I'm going to move a little bit forward, and I'll see if we can't show you that, Michael. This car is not long for this world, I fear me. So there you go, Michael. This female that we're closest to now is... As she closes her eyes, she has got orange eyes, and because of that we call her amber eyes. You can see the cut quite clearly there above her eye, and also the sort of cut on her nose. I'm going to do something fairly unethical and click my fingers and see if she won't open her eyes for you. I'm not going to do more than that, though. There we go. Quickly, Michael. Look, 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 Michael. There you go. You can see that they're slightly orange or amber-coloured. I always used to tell my guests, please don't click or make noises at the lions to make them look at you so that you can get a good photograph. And I've now just done exactly that. Anyway, I don't think it disturbed her too much. I think she'll be okay. Especially if it meant a young naturalist got a little bit of satisfaction out of this. Of course, our young naturalists are going to be the champions of the wilderness going forward. And my goodness, the wilderness needs a lot of champions. It is under constant threat from us human beings. Look at those flies there in that wound. So, Safari Diva, you say that cats, young cats, or house cats need their kittens' bellies in order to encourage digestion, and you want to know if lionesses do the same thing. Safari Diva, not that I've ever seen, no. It's not impossible, but I certainly haven't seen that at all. That's quite interesting. Thanks for that. Thanks for clearing it up. I think the reason I couldn't answer you is that I had no idea what you were talking about. I've never seen that before. That's fascinating. Thank you. They might do quite a lot of licking of their bellies, I suppose. Maybe they do a bit of kneading as well, but I've certainly not seen it before. It has been some time, of course, that since I've spent a lot of time with young lions. We had those Styx cubs before they were unfortunately removed from this mortal coil by the Birmingham boys. But before that, it had been some time still. So it will be wonderful if these two lionesses produce their babies and spend the majority of their time here on Djuma. Hello, Cat in Tampa. Another great question about the kind of egalitarian nature of lion society. And you want to know if the rest of the lionesses will go off and hunt for the female who's giving birth and looking after her cubs. The answer is there ain't no honor amongst thieves. These lionesses are profoundly excellent scavengers, but they're not very nice to each other. When one of them goes off to give birth, she's on her own. She will have to either hunt for herself or join the pride on the hunt and then eat, and otherwise she's not going to... What is that? Elephants. I can hear some elephants off to the northern side of the vehicle here. We'll go and have a look now as soon as we've finished this. So, Kat, basically, no, they won't hunt for her while she's having her babies. She'll have to look after herself, and that's just the way it works with lion society. Okay, let's head across to Jamie, get an update from her. It is elephants. They're coming this way, but they're quite a distance off now. Let's go across and get an update from Jamie. We'll see if we can find those elephants.
My current update is that I'm sitting in the middle of a drainage line for this river system I've kept talking about, listening, waiting, listening, just trying to see if I can figure out where Karuna has gone and what she's been up to. The reason I stopped here was just because Jandre picked up on a sound somewhere in the block where she disappeared off to, but it is a sound that hasn't been repeated. I suspect there's elephants in there. The tracks are all over the show, as is fresh dung. And it could be them making a noise. There's definitely buffalo in there as well. However, the only thing I've managed to find on my travels to show you, which is actually still very, very nice, and it's a particularly nice example, is a porcupine quill. And it's a really nice long one as well. It's one of their, they of course come in different sizes, and it's one of the longest ones that's been shed. They shed them just like we shed hair, or like fingernails sometimes break off. Just have a look at how sharp that point is. This is one of their main weapons of defense. Oh, it's very sharp. And this is slightly barbed, so once it has embedded itself in an animal, very, very tricky for that animal to then get it out. Now, contrary to popular belief, porcupines can't shoot quills, so they can't sort of aim their backsides at an attacker and then fire the quills at will, like a spear. They actually have to, basically what they'll do is they'll raise their quills, just like an animal raises its fur when it feels threatened in some way, and then they'll do short backwards charges, so basically rushing bottom first towards whatever particular threat happens to present itself. And then they've got these longer quills for the sort of the first line of defense, and then they've got much shorter, much thicker quills. And Deborah, absolutely, this is one of the longest quills that you will see from a porcupine. And as I said, different lengths apply to different things. Just trying to work out what is on here. Is that far enough away there, Jandre? Perfect. I mean, it looks like it's just mud, so it could well just be mud. Or it might have been something that's come from the porcupine itself. When you look at them really closely like this, they're very ridged and edged. You can see fine lines running all the way up them. And they are essentially just hollowed out substances similar to fingernails, constructed of keratin. I'm fascinated by the fact I still haven't seen a porcupine since I arrived on Djuma a couple of months ago. I'm still waiting for the opportunity to see one. I've seen plenty of signs for them, tracks, quills, but I just haven't managed to see the animal itself. And it's a pity because it is fascinating. Interestingly enough, the porcupine belongs to the rodent family, and it is in fact South Africa's largest rodent and one of the largest members of the rodent family completely, the largest of course being the capybara. Porcupines mate for life, and once they have found their mate, they will mate every single day, not for the purpose, or almost every single day, not for the purpose of producing offspring constantly, but for the purposes of reaffirming their bonds. But as you can imagine, that has to be done with a certain degree of caution on their part. Now, Christina, while we examine our porcupine quill whilst keeping an eye out for Karuna at the same time, Christina, you wanted to know, is it true that some quills are hooked at the end, like fish hooks? No, but they are barbed. So they do have tiny microscopic barbs on the end that once, as I said, once it goes in, makes it very difficult for the quill doesn't fall out again. So in the species, on the South African species of porcupine, no. There's no hooked quills unless there's been some kind of defect in the growth. Maybe an injury, something like that, that's caused it to curve like that. Porcupine quills are always straight. The short ones, the short stumpy ones that are about, I would say about a fifth or a sixth of the length of that porcupine quill that I just showed you, only about that long, are probably about 3 times the thickness, 3 times the diameter of that long, thin quill. Much denser, so that the long quills go into the animal that's attacking them, and then if that doesn't deter them, then an attack from those short, thick, very solid quills will certainly play a big role. And it's a brave predator that takes on a porcupine. They are can be very, very defensive animals. Their quills out like that. So, certain leopards specialize in hunting porcupine. Apparently Mvula has quite the technique for catching them, although he did manage to, on the odd occasion, find himself with a porcupine quill embedded in his cheek. But he seems to be one that, this is where Karula walked from. She's walked away from these lions south down this road. I'm so torn as to which way to go look for her. It's sort of guesswork, and I really think there's a chance she might be heading back towards those cubs. I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to go and do a stakeout of the southern boundary. And who knows, she might be bringing them back towards or back into Djuma. They are old enough that she will start taking them over the next few days and weeks. She will start bringing them back with her towards a kill. But yes, porcupines, there are certain leopards that specialize in them. Lions generally give them a wide berth, and it's usually the young male lions that are not stupid enough, but curious enough to tangle with porcupines. And I have seen them on the odd occasion doing that. It can be quite almost entertaining to watch their trepidation in terms of approaching an animal like a porcupine. And that, of course, is where the local story of the warthog's ugliness comes in. Apparently, according to local legend, the warthog used to be one of the most beautiful creatures in the land. He was so beautiful that he became very, very vain, and used to go and boast regularly about his good looks. And the one day he left his burrow to go out and about, and a very tired porcupine had a long night foraging and decided to crawl into the warthog's burrow and settle down there. And the warthog went about his daily business and found the lion and started boasting about how much more beautiful he was than the lion. The lion lost his temper and chased the warthog back towards his burrow, and he raced in without realizing that porcupine was down there. And he found himself with a face full of porcupine quills, and from that day on was scarred and ugly. That's the local legend about the porcupine and the warthog. And African hoopoe. They are such gorgeous birds. Those long probing beaks, you can really instantly get an idea of the way in which a bird functions just by looking at its beak. And that long, thin shape is a prober. Everything from hardy-dar ibises to sandpipers, digging through the wet mud to our little hoopoe here, that walks about the ground and tests the earth with the sensitive nerve cells at the end of his beak, searching for any sounds and movement. If he goes, there was actually a pair of them there, didn't see that. Just while I'm here, grab a hold of a grass inflorescence to show you. It's my favorite species of grass. Ooh, I am very much still attached to the vehicle. This is Natal red top grass, and it hasn't quite acquired the bright red color that it gets when it's ripe. But it is absolutely I think it's the most beautiful grass species that we get out here. Very, very soft seeds. Natal red top. There's also a false red top grass, which looks very, very similar. But you can start to see, maybe you can, maybe you can't, start to see just the beginnings of the red on the seeds. Maybe if I turn it that way, you might be able to see better. Perfect. Thank you, Jean-Andre. And it goes an almost pinkish red color, the color of a sunrise almost. I could describe it like that. Has been used as essentially by stripping these, can be used as a sort of a filling or a stuffing for something like a pillow, if you gather enough of it. And it does grow in very, very large quantities. It's also a very resilient grass. So you find it a lot along the sides of roads. Roads are a harsh environment for grass species, which is why you usually find what has in the past been termed pioneer species. Sort of the science behind grass and our understanding of grass is changing, so that name no longer fully applies. But it does describe quite well the resilient grass species, the way that they grow. So initially, in any sort of start to an environment, when you've got just, let's say you start from scratch with just the soil, you get the pioneer species, things like the red top grass, the carrot spike seed grass, turpentine grass. All of these grass layers are very, very tough and hardy, and they grow very easily with minimal resources. And what they do is they sort of set the scene for the rest of the grasses to establish themselves, because they improve the nutrients within the soil. They also act as a stabilizer for the soil so that it doesn't wash away. And thus they lay the foundations for the next set of grass species and the next set, until you get a really nice and healthy variety of grass species that are both nutritious and palatable for the animals. And from there, that will determine which animals you see. It will determine which herbivores you see. It will determine which predators you see in an area. It's one of my favorite things in the way that we understand, and the way that our understanding is constantly growing, of the way in which this all ties together, these sorts of connections. Funnily enough, I far prefer grass to flowers. I don't know what it is. I like flowers. I think they can be very interesting. But for me personally, I find far more fascination in grass and trees than I do in flowers. It's one of the things that we've all got our own little interests and specialities. I've just been loving watching the way that the grass in quarantine is making all of the animals sneeze as well. Going to wave hello to James, who is looking at some termites before I go and stake out the southern boundary. I can't even see James. He's disappeared. All right, well, I think what we'll do is we'll send you across, and let's find out why James is off the vehicle and what he's up to.
That's Brian telling me that we're live, everybody. It wasn't, in fact, a ground hornbill standing behind you. I've come to this particular tree because it's quite interesting. It's been covered in termites. Now, I'm going to put the microphone to the soil here, and I'll see if you can hear them going. They make a sort of alarm-calling rattle. Obviously not now. No, there, you may have heard that. Anyway, what is interesting that yesterday I saw a similar sort of thing around the clearings here, and it seems to be happening to a lot of the trees around the clearing. And I said I didn't think that these were the fungus-growing termites, Macrotermes natalensis, that make the big mounds. But these ones very clearly come from this mound, and they're building their mound up into the tree. Now, I'm not really sure why, so what I'm going to do is break off a little piece over here and find out what they are eating. And what you find is that they are eating into the bark. There's no question that that's what they're doing. Whether they will affect the wood of the tree, I'm not sure. I'd say it was unlikely because a lot of these trees are termite resistant, and I think the apple leaf tree is in fact one such tree. But why they've suddenly started covering all the trees here on quarantine clearings, I don't know. Normally they only eat dead and decaying plant matter and dead wood, but this is definitely a very living tree, and I'll be fascinated to know what happens to this tree as a result of this. Remember, a lot of trees, of course, grow out of termite mounds, and we're often asked what comes first, the termite mound or the tree. And almost always, I've said it's the termite mound that comes first, and the tree grows out of it because the seeds have been dragged in there by termites or some other animal, and the nutritious soil then results in the tree growing out of the sort of fertile ground that they have found. But in this case, perhaps it's an indication that that isn't the case, although I've never seen, or I can't remember seeing, an apple leaf tree growing out of a termite mound. But all over quarantine clearings this is happening. It's happening to the apple leaves, and it's happening to the silver cluster leaf trees. And so that's quite interesting. It's not happening to the combretum or bush willow trees, and it doesn't seem to be happening to the marulas either. So that's quite an interesting little side bit of the vegetation and interactions with some of the termites here. We did leave the lions, as is clear, because I wouldn't have been looking at a tree that close to the lions on foot. But we will go back there sometime during the course of the day. There's a piece of bark. I'm not sure why I brought that back in. All right, on we go. Let's see what else we can find. Come on, Wendy. There we go. You see this butterfly, Brian? It's called a blue pansy, if I'm not much mistaken. Beautiful picture there. While we look at that, I'll try and find it in the book. Donna, you want to know about fire ants, and do we get them here? You say you get them in South America, in South Carolina, and they leave a horrible welt when they bite you. Donna, we don't get fire ants here, but we get equivalent ants that do bite. Red ants will give you a nasty bite, but they don't tend to leave any welts. So they're not quite as nasty as the fire ants that you get in the Americas. I know that there's some particularly nasty ants that occur in the Americas, and the fire ant is but one of them. It is indeed a blue pansy. Brian, we can have a look at it in the book. It's a deeply aged book my mother gave me when I became a guide for the first time. And it was scoffed at because it's got everything in it. It's got insects and birds and trees and flowers and fungus and all sorts of things. And so that means that it is necessarily low on detail, but it's astonishing how many of the things that we find out here are in this book. There's the blue pansy, and its very close relation, the yellow pansy, is also found around here quite a lot, especially with the new flushes of wild flowers that we have out here. There have been many, many new butterflies. Beautiful. They don't often sit like that, do they, Brian? No. Normally you have to track them, and then people become nauseous while they're watching. Yeah. And of course, those blue spots on the butterfly are a really nice kind of example of an eye spot. And we think that a lot of the insects have got these eye spots on the backs of their wings so that they look like they're actually a large face belonging to a much bigger animal, which might then put off predators. There's an ant walking in the background there, a few of them, just going about their business, probably raiding a termite mound, stealing some babies. I must say, I do miss the bushwalk, and I look forward to the day when our camera comes back and we're able to do bushwalk again. Beautiful. Well done, Brian. A very nice butterfly sighting there, Tom. Congratulations. Right, on we go. Come on, Wendy. There we go. Now, apparently Jigger is coming back today. Now, for those of you who are new viewers, I know it might seem odd to name the vehicles, but we have named them. This is Wendy. Wendy is a recalcitrant old bag. Jigger is so recalcitrant that she was sent away for some time to look after herself at the hospital. And then Rusty, of course, as we know, is the newest Land Rover that we have here. It's still well in excess of 10 years old, which for a Land Rover years are a bit like dog years, probably even shorter. So 10 years for Land Rover is like 100 human years. And Natasha, you want to know how we come up with the names of these vehicles. I keep forgetting, but Rusty, VM came up with Rusty because as soon as we bought Rusty and Rusty arrived looking spanky new, and the first thing we did was to take off the water cap to check, you know, the water level, and the water was bright red on account of the rust that was coming, basically filtering through every piece of her. So that's how she got the name Rusty. Wendy, you see, one of our long-time viewers will tell you this probably. Do you remember how Wendy got her name? Ah, here we go.
She's named Wendy because the previous owner had named it Wendy.
Right. The previous owner named this car Wendy, and that's why she is called Wendy. And Jigger?
Jigger was named along with the Ganda, which is the original.
Oh. So
also because it was so on the road.
Right, okay. So to Jigger, I mean, I know we spell it Jigga, which is incorrect. It's a Zulu word, Jigga, means to turn around. Gujiga, to turn. And that's where Jigger gets her name, because if you drive Jigger in a straight line and hold the steering wheel, you will find yourself listing to starboard or listing to port, depending on what the vehicle feels at the time. And that's why she's called Jigger. And the original one apparently was called Ganda, and that's probably from the Zulu word for tractor, Iganda Ganda, an onomatopoeic word. And I think it's a lovely word, and of course a Land Rover often sounds like a tractor. Now, they don't make these Land Rover Defenders anymore. They stopped making them last year. I'm sure it's a fairly large marketing campaign. I'm pretty sure they'll make a new one, probably within the next 12 months or so. A new one will be released. But these ones were basically, the reason we have such old ones here is that these are probably the last ones that were semi-fixable in the bush. All of the new ones, of course, you've got to have a fairly sophisticated computer system to fix. This one, you do have to have one if you want to truly fix them, but you can do some kind of bush mechanics on them. But we used to have an old V8 where we used to do the game drives down at Londolozi and up north in the Timbavati, and that old V8 was a very simple engine that could be fixed in the bush, and so that's why we used them. These days, however, fancy new diesels and engines, really nice quiet diesels, but have to be fixed by highly competent mechanics with computer systems. That's why we've got these old things, because I'm sure sometimes you must wonder why on earth it is that we struggle through life with aging vehicles. But that's why. I think Land Rovers have, so many cars have become much like athletic clothing. They're more statements than they are sort of statements of usage. And you can actually find places. Got a 4x4 that you take your kids to school in, you can find people who will put mud on your car for money to show that you haven't just bought the vehicle to drive around the city and the tar roads there. Right, we're going to go back to the lines. We'll have a look there, and while we do that, let's go and see what Jamie's can see.
Trundling along on the back of Rusty, we're making our way towards the southern boundary. Just working on a hunch here. I'm really hoping it pays off. that Karuna is on her way, either back to the cubs or, you never know, going to fetch the cubs. I know that we're all so incredibly excited to catch our first glimpses of them. I've only seen them once, and it was a very, very brief sighting when she was denning on Gowrie Main, our southern boundary and a main road. And we've got so much to look forward to over the next few weeks. Let's see if she hasn't decided to adopt her usual route. The only thing that might actually prevent her, if she does have a kill somewhere in that drainage line, the one thing that might prevent her from bringing the cubs back today, apart from that they're still quite young, is the presence of the lions. The fact that the lions are so close might make her decide otherwise. I don't even see what this drongo's doing. He was fluttering about. He's on the ground there. He was fluttering about on the ground. He's now back up and flown away. Looks as though he was trying to hunt termites. I know that James was busy chatting a bit about the termites in the area. And because it's nice and cool and cloudy, there might still be some out and about and on the menu for a fork-tailed drongo. The difficulty with tracking in this area where we are at the moment is it's sort of this treehouse area, but there's a whole load of different pans, water holes, that the buffalo are currently inhabiting, and it's made tracking and walking in this block exceptionally difficult because the buffalo are just all over the show, and it's like playing Dodge the Duggar Boy. It's pans like this one that they are. We haven't got any at the moment. Oh my word. We have got such a fly accompaniment around my box with all of the books. I don't know if you can see them buzzing about. There are hundreds of them. Chandra, are you bringing the flies or am I bringing the flies? There are not millions, that might be a slight exaggeration, but there really are hundreds of them all around the bonnet, flying about our heads. It's interesting. These are very, very tiny, very young flies. And I have noticed a general increase, obviously due to the rain and the water. It's brought the flies out. I have noticed an increase in general, but this is the worst I've seen it. Interesting question from Beer about why it is that flies seem to bother the herbivore animals more than they do the carnivores. Well, the carnivores definitely have a problem with flies as well, but you raise a very valid point. It's particularly buffalo that they seem to spend a considerable period of time moving about over the carnivores, and I'm not entirely sure what it is that's. Perhaps the dung of the herbivores is more attractive. Ouch, there's a fly biting my ankle. And avoid all of the corrugations on the road and look for tracks at the same time. But maybe it's the buffalo dung that is more attractive. Perhaps it is the They obviously followed through from Arathusa. Hold on. Some of those tracks look a little bit too tiny for lion tracks. Not lion tracks at all. Male leopard tracks. Fairly fresh male leopard tracks. They have been driven over. This must be Tingana. No sign of Tundi. That's very interesting. Let's see if we can't work out where they've gone and if they've gone onto Djuma or if they've carried on along this road. Male leopard tracks. Those were a surprise. I was looking for female leopard tracks. Now, the last time we saw Tingana, he was occupied with his lady friend Thandi, Karuna's older daughter. It seems as though he's now moving off on his own. I can't see her tracks, but as I said, they've been driven over. This is a very main road. It's a very busy road. So they have been driven over, so there's a possibility she is still with him. Now, when we saw them, just judging by the amount of, maybe violence is perhaps the wrong word, but certainly aggression shown within their mating, it suggested that they were only maybe a day or two into that. And it could be quite a short mating period. It could be 4 days, it could go up to 6 days that they spend together when leopards are mating. When was that? That was 2 days ago that we saw them. So it would be about the right time for Tingana to move off on his own. I can't see them anymore. He's gone off somewhere. It looked, the last direction, it looked as though he was going off towards, across our southern boundary. And this is what I was talking about when I said tracking in this block is difficult. Oh, hello, boy. It's the one with the shoulder wound. We've seen this buffalo. This is actually a different injury. This looks fresher. There's obviously 2 buffalo with shoulder wounds like this. Ooh. See how skittish he is. I wonder if that was freshly inflicted, but therein lies the problem. Those birds sitting on his back, the oxpeckers, they are going to continue to worry at and keep that wound open. And I think you saw this buffalo with Brent a little while ago. Oh, look at his mouth full of grass. That looks yummy. But the oxpeckers, whilst they do feed on ticks, they also make a meal of picking at a buffalo's injury. Oh, that's an injury that might have in the past been inflicted by lions. Let's find out if James has returned to them.
Hello everybody, we've just come back to the lions and we were following some impala as they walked slowly towards here, deeply suspicious. It was two ewes and a lamb, 2 lambs, sorry, straight towards these lionesses, but the wind blew straight over the top of the cats and they knew something was up. Now they're alarm calling. I think the lionesses had actually stalked to the edge of the thicket and were thinking about pushing home some kind of attack, but then they were spotted. Let's just wait and see where they go now. And they're actually being relatively active. I don't want to move just yet. I just want to see where they go. Here comes another one. There we go. That bush is really in the wrong place, isn't it, Brian? There we go, they're moving now. Hello, nature is beautiful. You've asked a very nice question, and it's a nice question because it opens up topics of discussion. And you want to know, do they ever hunt wildebeest? Because normally you only ever see them stalking antelope. Well, strictly speaking, a wildebeest would be a kind of antelope because it's part of the same family. But I know what you mean. You mean normally you see them stalking things like impala. Nature is beautiful. Actually, this pride kind of specializes in buffalo, usually. And so the question of them, what they specialize in, comes up. And lion prides of various areas will specialize in different kinds of animals. And what you find, they are now stalking something. Two of them have gone down the other side there. I'm just going to put our noses in here. So yes, this pride does specialize largely in buffalo, and what that means, they are definitely on a bit of a stalk here. What that means is that they don't generally go for wildebeest. They will eat wildebeest if they can, especially young ones, but you're right, we don't often see them stalking wildebeest. Often buffalo. I think often they eat impala during the night time and we don't even notice because we're not around, so we don't see them eating those impala. I don't know what they're going for here or what's come down towards the water. These two are not particularly excited, but they are watching. So we've got the two here. There are three off to where we can't see them, but there's one coming behind underneath that dead tree, one further behind her, and then the other one's gone towards the dam from where that lioness you're looking at has gone. There she is. Well spotted, Brian. There might be a buffalo coming down to the water. Because the buffalo, of course, as the heat starts to build, will come and spend some time at the water. It's not hot at all. I mean, it's still probably only about 23 or 4 degrees Celsius, which is 75-ish Fahrenheit. 73, 72, 75, somewhere around there. Now the pride's kind of split up. They definitely saw something going down towards the water there. I don't know what it was. Let's just go and sneak forward and have a look. Oh, let's quickly go across to Jamie. She's got some of the most entertaining animals that you'll ever find.
Oh, they've just disappeared, unfortunately. This is the first time I've ever seen baboons on our live safaris, and they have dashed into that block away from us. They're definitely not relaxed baboons at all. We hardly ever seen them, or at least in the last few months we've hardly seen them. I'll try and get you another view. Unfortunately, I think they've gone. I think they're running away. Jean actually spotted them and got them. Oh, yes. Backwards a bit, you think? I don't want him to run away. How's your view from there? He's about to go. There we go. Look at that. A brief but awesome view. Strangely enough, I never thought I'd say this, but that's one of the rarest animal sightings I've had on drive. And I'm laughing because as a South African, you don't think of baboons as rare at all. Let's try for one more view. I know that apparently some of the viewers who've been watching for many years have told me that they used to regularly see a group of baboons known as the Gowrie Gang on the live drives. But we've actually got to the point where we've tried tracking baboon troops before in order to put them on camera for you. They are highly entertaining animals. They haven't made a sound either. Usually when you've got a baboon troop, you hear this constant bow, bow. Communication to each other, sometimes a little bit of inter-troop discipline from the males. And baboons are fascinating. They have a social structure that's known as oligarchy, which means that they're dominated by, rather than having one male or a set of related males, it's a combination of a couple of different males, big males, that are not necessarily related to each other, but retain control and protect the troop from threats. And a big male baboon could take on a leopard quite easily and win. They've been known to kill leopards before. They weigh far more than I do, a large male baboon, with canines larger than those of a leopard. So they can be seriously fearsome animals. And I think, unfortunately, they have disappeared off into this very, very dense block. And the one thing that we've noticed since the rains, of course, is that our view into the blocks has been drastically reduced. I'm going to try and loop them. I'm going to try and get around to where I think they might pop out, but I have a feeling that they're going to stop once they're away from the road and settle down in there. It's also very common to see baboons and impala together. I'm not sure if you noticed the impala that were around them. It's extra eyes on the ground. Let me try and see if I can't get you another view of these baboons. While I do, let's head back to James and the lions.
So this lioness is now apparently, finally, trying to clean the very disgusting looking tick off her eyes. She's got a few of them, engorged grey ticks that have sucked the blood out of the top of her eyelids. Ugh. I mean, those are really disgusting. Ugh. I must say, her fellow Pride members have not done her a great service there. They could easily have removed them. That really is pretty grim. And now they're stalking each other. This is quite fun. They just can't help themselves. Cats sneak forward. You see the way she put her head down there, in between her shoulders, sunk her shoulders down, which is typical stalking behavior. There we go. Not that the other lioness didn't know precisely what was going on. It's still quite nice to see. Maybe she's going to ask one of her pride mates here to take those disgusting grey ticks off the underside of her eyes. Now, of course, a tick to a domestic animal often means biliary or some other kind of fairly nasty disease. But to the animals out here, they're often used to any of the parasites and diseases that could be transferred by ticks. And so, while that does look pretty disgusting, I don't think you're going to find that it affects that lioness's life appreciably at all. There are more flies this year than I think I've experienced in the previous 39 of my existence on planet Earth. They hide on these bushes, and as you drive past, they kind of leap onto the vehicle and then into your ears and your nose and your eyes. And the only way to get rid of them is to drive at an astonishingly dangerous speed down the road, and eventually they kind of fall off. But you've got to keep going, because if you stop suddenly, they catch up with you. They're relentless. And they're looking for any bits of salt, any bits of nutrition that they can get. So if there's a wound on the lion, that's where the fly is going to be. And there are a number of wounds on these lions. You can see one there, and that is just covered in flies. And they will be laying their eggs in that. They will be laying their maggots. And if they hatch, it's actually not always a bad thing. The maggots will eat away any rotting material. But I mean, that is fairly vile. Now, Dave or Gabe, I couldn't quite catch it. Gabe, an interesting one that I think it does require some explanation in terms of the evolutionary history of lions. So you want to know why it is that they don't live with the males, and because you thought that they lived in unison. Gabe, that kind of notion of lions living in a pride that consists of females and then a male with them, or two males with them, is born of stories such as The Lion King, which, while it was a wonderful story, was a bearer of so much biological mistruth that it has done incredible harm, or it has provided endless topics of discussion for safari guides around the continent. So, Gabe, lions don't live together for a number of reasons. First of all, remember, when you look at an evolutionary, I could give you the very basic answer, which is just to say that, well, the role of a male lion is to maintain a territory in which a few female territories will exist. So in this particular case, we have the Birmingham boys, 5 young males, who maintain a territory in which there are probably 3 prides. The pride on Mala Mala, the Styx pride, and the Nkuhuma pride. Now, they maintain the territory, and within their big territory, the 3 prides will maintain an exclusive territory themselves. And the point of that is that they then protect the area from other males, and the females then in turn kind of, if you like, they do sort of provide food for the males in some respects. If the males happen to be around when these females kill, then they will come in and steal the food away from the females. It's not so much that the females choose to hunt for the males. In fact, that is never the case. But the question is, why is that the case? Why is that most advantageous? Remember that evolution acts on a species. Well, it initially acts on individuals, but it will tend to act on a species. Now, what that means is that although it might seem as if it would be better for this pride to have a male with them all the time, simply because he does provide a certain amount of protection, for the species it doesn't really work like that. So there is an evolutionary advantage to the males being away. The evolutionary advantage is that they are patrolling purely for other males, which is a good thing. They are not stealing as much food from these females as they might if they lived with the pride. Remember, males, they can hunt, but they are actually the best scavengers that we have out here. So they probably scavenge more than any other predator that we have out here. They'll scavenge from their own kind and from anything else that they happen to find. And so it's actually more advantageous for the prides to be without the males unless they're mating. So the male's role in the species is to look after the territory, make sure that other males don't come in and kill their own cubs. And that's just basically how it's sort of fallen to lion society to survive. And that seems to work very well for them. As I said earlier, they were at one stage the most widely spread land mammal on Earth. Very nice question. Thank you, Gabe. Ooh, and Anne, as we were just sort of on the same topic, you say, now that we know they don't live together, do the females mark territory? Yes, fastidiously. They maintain very exclusive territories from the other females. And so, like I said, there will be probably 2 or 3 female territories within the larger male territory. So the Nkuhumas have got an area here that encompasses Djuma and Torchwood. South of us, the Styx Pride will occupy an area around Chitwa, Cheetah Plains into the northern sections of Mala Mala, and south of them there is another pride. I think that the Birmingham boys are dominating at the moment. So very nice questions there. Thank you, Gabe, and thank you, Annie. Let's head across to Jamie. She's got a pig.
Unfortunately, no sign of our baboons. However, we have found something else for you. A warthog with an itchy face. It's okay, boy. You can continue your scratch. Branch is perfect shape to act as a scratching tool. It's a very young male. I know it's a male because he's got 4 warts on his face, 2 near his eyes, and then two near his nose. Talamus such, and he's very, very young. Those tusks just starting to peep through. Puts him at about 6-7 months old. So still in the company of Mom, who is a bit more skittish. She is here. Oh. Oopsie daisies. Bye-bye. Gone. Warthog on her way. As our warthogs dash away, we sometimes see, or we see certain groups of warthogs. We know that some are more skittish than others. And I know that the ones around this Twin Dams area are exceptionally uncomfortable with vehicles. We did have a female warthog that we watched for a considerable period of time. She got very, very skinny until she eventually died. We don't know what was wrong with her, but one of our feelings was that the drought and the lack of good food exacerbated some kind of pre-existing condition, maybe tuberculosis, maybe some kind of virus. Whatever it was, the drought actually made it worse to the point that she eventually died from the illness. But Maurice was wondering, have the warthogs in particular managed to recover their condition in time to manage to get through this dry season that lies ahead? And yes, they have. We did notice that it wasn't just her. A lot of the warthogs were looking particularly thin, far more thin than I've ever seen them at this time of year. And largely due to the fact that they were reliant on tubers and grass, and the amount of growth just wasn't providing for their nutritional needs. But yes, most of them have managed to recover. They seem to be fine. There's still one or two that I've noticed that are looking a little bit thin, bones sticking out a little bit. Warthogs, for some reason, are particularly sensitive to, first of all, loss in good quality food, but also drops and changes in temperature. And a lot of them, as soon as the temperature drops, if there's a sudden cold front, they tend to get pneumonia, as well as a number of other typical diseases. So they are very sensitive, but yes, Maurice, they have managed to recover very well. The same can actually be said for the buffalo. Hello, boy. I know you. Look at him. It's our gentleman with the blind white eye. Blind right white eye. Blind white right eye. There we go. Got there eventually. Hello, boy. Makes him a little bit more unsettled with vehicles. You can see how closely he's keeping an eye on us, quite literally in this case, as he munches away on his snack. And he is coated in glutinous mud. He's obviously spent his morning around one of the drying mud wallows. You can even see the lines in the back where he's walked underneath a tree, and they've scratched marks into his back. So clear. And that's one of the ways that you can actually track an animal like this. When you've come across a mud wallow and you see that they've been wallowing, but they've since moved, and this applies for any animal that you want to find that's been wallowing in mud, you can follow their trail by looking for where the mud has been scraped underneath. Well, very often, first of all, it drips off, which makes a nice little breadcrumb trail. But then you can follow where they've rubbed up against plants as well. So a useful little tracking device. His tail, the end of his tail, is absolutely coated in this stuff. And all of the mud wallows in this area are quiring. It's all right, boy. Don't worry, you can turn your back on us. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to sneak up on you. All of the mud wallows have started to acquire a sort of farmyard scent. It's the only way I can describe them. They smell like a cow shed. And that's due to the constant presence of these buffaloes wallowing in them. And I'm not sure what happened to his eye that caused that. Perhaps a collision in a fight with the male might have detached the retina, or it could just be a naturally occurring cataract. Excuse me, buffalo, I don't suppose you've seen a leopard? I guess not. He doesn't seem to be too talkative this morning. Oh, let's just let him cross the road. You see the way he startled there? He caught the smell of something. It isn't bothering him too much. He's going to stop and check, however. Surprisingly delicate walk for an animal of that size. I just wanted to let him get a little bit ahead of us. You can see he's just a little bit jumpy, mainly because he's blind in one eye. So I'd give him some space to move ahead so that we didn't scare him in any way. There is an elephant in there. I thought I saw an elephant. When I stopped for the buffalo, there's a couple of elephants in there. There you go. We'll try and improve our view ever so slightly. It's the same block that we lost the baboons in, so it could be a bit tricky getting in here. But let's try. Let us try and get a different view. Although they might be moving towards us, actually. I'll drive into the open clearing a little bit and then see if they don't come to us. The thing about following elephants off-road is that as soon as you start moving over branches, with branches cracking and so on, what they will usually do, what they tend to do is just move away from you and to constantly move away from you, which is obviously a situation we would like to avoid. And the best way of approaching an elephant sighting, and there is a very tiny calf here, is to just let them come to you. Hello, guys. Such a tiny baby there. Hello, girls. And nature is beautiful. You've said that every time you attempt to go to bed, something else keeps popping up to keep you awake. The bush is full of these wonderful surprises. This is my favorite elephant. I know one shouldn't have favorites and all of that, but I know her fairly well. It's the elephant with the short trunk. She's missing the tip of her trunk, which is why there's such a she's got her tiny baby with her, the little female calf. She disappeared for a few months and then came back with this little one in tow. We are so fortunate to have an environment that is teeming with all sorts of wonders, the like of which keeps nature is beautiful wide awake. They're having a bit of a dust bath now. Yeah. Little one did a bit of a trip there. Now they are slowly moving towards the road. So rather than attempt to follow them, I'm just going to move a little bit ahead of them and just go around that way so that we can get a different view, although they've stopped now for a dust bath. Hello, Mommy. Can I come get a clear view of you, please? She's busy kicking the dirt to loosen it, and then, oh, she's even using her tusks now. And then using her trunk to scoop it up over her back. She's found a tuber as well. I always love watching her because it's incredible to watch the way that she has adapted to feed and to move about with that slight disability that she has. She's lost the tip of her trunk, so she doesn't have the prehensile tip, and she's lost about the first quarter of it. And that would most likely, it might have been due to a crocodile injury, but most likely it was due to a very unfortunate situation where she must have encountered a snare that had been placed there by desperate people looking to catch bushmeat, and unfortunately she fell victim to it. It wouldn't have happened here, but as you know, this area is wide open to the Kruger National Park and other areas, so she might have moved through and encountered a snare like that there. Difficult to get you the best views in this thick block, and they seem to have stopped for the moment, but I'll try heading back towards the road and let them just come towards us. Let's have a bit of a view of her from here. And she's managed to, she's clearly was separated from her herd, whether it was due to the fact that she had to feed slower or whether it happened in the original injury, with the original injury itself. But she's always moved about on her own, and she's managed to create her own little herd through calves of her own. She's got an older female calf of coming up to about, I would guess, at 10, 11. And she's got a roughly 5-6-year-old young male, and then this new tiny little girl. And she's basically created her own family unit. An elephant's herd structure is so important in their life. It's wonderful to see that she's managed to establish her own little family. What's nice to see, something I've noticed with her in particular, and it's common with all elephant herds, but her oldest daughter takes a lot of responsibility for the calf. And that's very common. The young females practice their mothering skills on calves that are either younger siblings or younger cousins. But I've noticed particularly that this female feels comfortable with her older daughter caring for the youngster quite frequently. It's nice to get to witness and observe those types of dynamics within a family unit like this. And James, you've said that you will never tire of seeing elephants. Agreed, absolutely. Even if it is a view of them through the thick vegetation, through the trees, hidden away like this, I'm completely with you. There's always a sense of peace that comes with seeing these incredible animals. I was going to call them gentle giants, and I changed my mind just because that's not an entirely true description. They can be gentle, they can be angry, they can be grumpy. To describe them as a blanket gentle giant is not really, is almost, I wouldn't call it demeaning, but it doesn't really acknowledge the complexity of the way that these animals work. But I find that there's no mood that I'm in that an elephant sighting, a peaceful elephant sighting cannot fix. Or at least help. Let's go back onto the road. Hopefully they decide to come across in that direction. They are slowly moving. And we should be able to get a better view from there. And hopefully while we're sitting here, the baboons might decide to pop in as well. They were heading in this general direction when we lost the view of them. And while we reposition to get a nice view of our elephants, Catherine, you were wondering on the subject of baboons. why they are so rare out here. And I think the drought has played a large role. They've spent a considerable period of time moving in the more riverine areas, so places where there are permanent rivers. Here we go. They'll come to us. We just have to wait for them. But Catherine, I think that's played a role. They've moved further towards the large flowing rivers like the Olifants, the Sabi River, the Sand River. There's more food and shelter for them there. And I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen them in this particular part of the Sabi Sands. I love watching baby elephants in their antics, especially when they're attempting to learn to use their trunks, as this one is. Getting swatted by Mom's tail there briefly. Baby elephants will start to eat solid food at around 6 months of age, which I would guess at this little one's age is roughly round about there, just judging by her size. Come on, Mummy, bring your beautiful family this way. Don't see the young female that is with her anymore. Only see the young male calf. John, you were wondering about our elephant's trunk as we watch her sort of manipulate the world around her and learn to, or work around having that kind of injury. John is watching all the way in Arkansas, and the answer to your question about whether or not it would affect her ability to trumpet is an interesting one, because of course the trunk acts as a resonating chamber. And no, she could still make those vocalizations. Most of them originate within the larynx of the elephant and are then, as I said, amplified. So it's not, the movies give off the impression that it's like blowing a trumpet. And that's not quite how it works with them. Now, while I patiently wait for our Ellies to come and join us out on the road, it seems as though James has also found some elephants and he's got a lovely view.
It's very seldom one can say that one has done something better than Jamie Patterson, but apparently these elephants are better visible than the ones she is with. And that cow in front of us is a magnificent cow. She's fairly stocky, but she's also got some incredible ivory on her. It looks like bull's ivory. It looks like bull's tusks. They'll tell you that you can tell a bull from a cow by the angle at which the tusks come out of the skull. And hers bend forward in exactly the same manner that a bull's will. And there are a whole lot of youngsters here, and they were making a tremendous noise just now. That's how we found them. And I'm just going to see if we can't move a little bit and see if we can get a slightly better view of them. Just sort of beyond where they are. Oh, there's one of them lying down on the ground there. I'll try and get in close. But beyond where they are, it does get very thick, so we'll be in very much the same position that Jamie is if we don't get a good view from where we are now. Look at the little one on the floor there. That's awesome. Just having a snooze and a bit of a play. The two of them look to be the same age there. They always look so awkward, like they can't get up. But see, trying to reach across and touch his colleague or her colleague. Sweet, man. That's too wonderful. Let's just sneak around this termite mound here. I think we'll have to go this way around. Now, the little ones, I can just see them through there chasing each other around. Yeah, it is quite thick. We'll just stop here for a while. You can get a little bit of a view of them through there. Brian, I'll sneak a little bit forward. How's that? Not great. We'll just see if they don't move a bit. And they're just quietly browsing down. I suspect if you keep watching the Djuma Dam cam during the course of the day, you'll find that they'll come down there and have a drink a little bit later on. And if they come across those lions, the lions will be asked to move by large trumpeting and shouting. Let me move a bit forward again. Brian, there's also one off to starboard here that is hiding in the bushes. You can't even see it in there. I can just see bits of grey moving through the bush there. Is this one going to come through here? Probably not. So you can just see one through there. I'll just switch off briefly and then we'll move around to get a better view. But that's not too far from us, and yet almost completely invisible. That's about 20 meters. Okay, let's sneak forward a bit. Of course, I say that word sneak, but in Wendy, of course, when you start her, sneaking is not an option. We'll just try and get in amongst here. They are actually moving away from the water, kind of into the thickets here. But we'll try and get another view. And they've made such a mess off-road here. They've pushed trees over everywhere, which means that it's quite difficult to maneuver. There's going to be a bit of a bump, everyone. Lift your coffee cups off your laps. And again. We'll just poke our noses up through here again. We don't want to make too much noise around them, because that will unsettle them and that won't be fair. Go. They're all kind of, it's quite a large herd, just grazing or browsing through here. And they're quite split up, which means they're pretty relaxed. If they were unrelaxed, they'd be sort of grouping together. This one is watching us quite carefully. A youngster. Probably almost 10. And not very nervous, just having a watch. Seeing what we're about. Now the trick, of course, with these elephants is to try and maintain a level of trust between us and them. A level of trust that never crosses the line where either they feel that they can approach and touch us, which has happened once or twice in the recent past, or where they feel they have to move away from us because they feel threatened. And it's a delicate balance to try and maintain, and often not a very easy one. You also don't want them to ever feel threatened to the point that they feel they must turn around and chase you away, because that is A, terrifying, and B, not very nice for the elephant. Let's understand that if an elephant takes the decision that it wants to chase you, it really is very upset indeed. Very peaceful, kind of, we've reached that time of the morning where everything starts to feel entirely peaceful. That expectation of the dawn, like when we found those lions, has dissipated. The lions have gone to sleep, and it's almost like the bush knows that the predators are now seeking refuge and respite and everything just kind of relaxes. And the elephants too will go off into some thick bush fairly soon and have a bit of a snooze. The adults won't lie down, but the youngsters may well. Okay, Jamie's elephants are now performing better than my elephants, so let's go and have a look at them.
Patience is paying off in this particular respect, as our elephant's herd slowly strolls towards us. The young female in the lead with a trunk full of grass and now dust. So entertaining to watch them like this. And there's always a special nature of a sighting where the elephants have chosen to come closer to you rather than approaching them. With all animals, they will be comfortable enough to walk right past the vehicle if they have chosen to do so. So if they have chosen to move in and close to you, they will come far closer than they would ever allow you to go if you approach them directly. This is the young female that I was talking about, the one that takes responsibility for her mother's calf. She's still very young, got many, many years ahead of her. And Cheryl, you were wondering, do elephants continue to grow until they die? And the answer is yes, they do. Most of their growing is done between the ages or from birth up until roughly the age of this young cow here, a little bit older. So the majority of their growing, the most exponential growing, is from 0 to about 15. Before that starts to plateau off. And they will continue to grow, but very, very slowly in their later years. And of course, an elephant can live up to 60, if not older in some cases. That's a large time, and their tusks will continue to grow as well. Some elephants are more genetically programmed to have larger tusks than others, but they will have that continuous growth. Bulls in particular, their growth rate is faster than that of the females, as it is with most mammals, and they are, of course, capable of obtaining a much larger size. I had hoped that the female might move the guys or the baby across in our direction, but she's still very hidden behind a fallen knobthorn tree. Oh, somebody had an itchy ankle there. It's wonderful being in a sighting like this where you're close enough to hear the sound of an elephant's skin chafing against itself when they scratch or do anything like that. Just hear gentle crunching. That secretion, or the moisture on the side of her face, suggests that at some point she was maybe agitated. It's secretions from the temporal gland. Now, the general train of thought was that means an elephant that is stressed out. But recent research suggests that they can secrete like that to show any kind of heightened emotion. So it could be they could secrete while they're feeling playful, if they're happy about something, or if they're stressed. But you can usually read an elephant's body language when they are stressed, and we just haven't quite got the momentum I wanted to be able to roll forward. And there's the perfect indicator, of course, in terms of elephant body language and interpreting it. That tail gently swishing backwards and forwards is a sign of a very, very relaxed elephant. It's when they hold their tails dead still that you know that they are focused on something. And when an elephant's tail goes stiff and is held out at 90 degrees to the body, that's when you know you're dealing with an animal that is feeling particularly stressed or frightened. It's amazing how delicately they move through vegetation like this. Hear the sound of her moving branches out of the way. We just don't quite have the slope. I wanted to just slightly roll forward, but we don't have the slope for it. Hello, big girl. Oops, sorry. Squeaky brakes. There's our view of the little one hiding behind Mom, behind a big sister and Mom. And a lovely, lovely way to finish off our sunrise safari. We didn't manage to find Karula again, but she will be an exciting prospect for the afternoon. We've got to spend some time in the company of giants. Thank you very much, Chandra, for all of your fantastic camera work as always, as well as to Rebecca and Kirsty in Final Control. And most importantly, thank you to all of our viewers out there that make this job such a special one to have. Have a fantastic day, wherever you are in the world, and we'll catch up with you for the Sunset Safari.
A very nice way to end off the drive, as Jamie says, if I could find the lions which have moved. We've come down to the water. There are buffalo, as I suspected there would be. Are the lions perhaps stalking them, or have they been chased off? Most embarrassing. Don't know, really. We'll have a look around here. We have at least had a great lion sighting today. I didn't see their tracks on the road. Brian, you don't see any lions, do you? Nope. This is astonishing. Anyway, there are the buffalo. And apparently there was nothing on the dam cam, and those buffalo are looking pretty chilled out. So I wonder if the lions haven't gone into the drainage line. I suspect that's exactly what they've done. So they're probably headed slightly further north of where we last saw them. So there are the buffalo. Now, the Nkuhuma pride does like to eat buffalo, but these big bulls will possibly be too much for them to bite off at the moment. They don't have any male help with them, but it's not impossible. The last buffaloes that they have been eating have generally been cows or youngsters. We'll just do a quick loop around here and see if we can't get a last glimpse. Otherwise, we will try and find them again this afternoon. Now, while I'm driving along here, please remember that Sam will be making his official debut. You were with him for his interview drives, but he's making his official debut. And he'll give you a large sort of proportion of his background. But he doesn't come from the guiding background that Brent and I and Scott came from, or that Jamie comes from. He comes from a more academic background. And I think that is so valuable because it means his approach is going to be very different from ours. And I think that's wonderful. It adds some diversity to the team, but his approach will be slightly different, I'm sure, and it will as he goes along the journey of discovery with you through Djuma and through the development of his technique as a presenter. So I hope that you're going to enjoy the journey with him, because I think it will be a wonderful journey. Just said something. Rebecca, go again with that. Lions apparently heading towards the lodge. I don't know where, but they're probably in the drainage line down here. We'll have a quick look down here and just see if we can't spot them. So I think it'd be a good place for Sam to start this afternoon. A good flat lion sighting is an excellent introduction. That's how I began my little career here. I don't see them nowhere. Well, they're somewhere around here. Anyway, we will find them at some stage. during the course of the afternoon, I hope. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments today. Been wonderful chatting about the lions. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, of course, to Jamie and to Jandre and to Rebecca and Kirsty. And that's all I have to thank. We'll see you later this afternoon. Bye-bye.